Hi, I'm Luke, and welcome to DB Clips. Today I want to look at the question, how do I have healthy relationships? Now, let me give you two caveats before we dive into this. This is a topic that really requires far more time than we're going to devote to it today. So what I hope to give you is principles and building blocks to create these relationships. The other is that you can only control your behavior. Romans 12:18 says, if possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. And so what we're going to look at is the ways that we can create a place for these healthy relationships to exist. And we're primarily going to look at this from the perspective of our relationship with other Christians. And let me explain why. When we talk about our relationship with other Christians, there is an expectation that we're all on the same page and that really we're all striving towards the same purpose. When it comes to a non-believer, we can't put an expectation of certain behaviors on them when they don't actually have a belief system or a reason to behave in that way. They don't have that straight edge. I can't say to a non-believer, hey, Jesus tells us to treat each other this way. Their response is likely to be, so what? Who is Jesus to me? And so how we interact with a non-Christian is really a completely separate matter. So how do we interact with our Christian brothers and sisters? For this, we're going to look at Colossians 3. First, let's look at verses 12 through 15. It says, put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, patience, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other. As the Lord has forgiven you, so you must also forgive. And above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in one body. Now this is quite the list, so let's go through these characteristics we're called to have one by one. The first, compassionate hearts. This is not just to have sympathy, but to have empathy for where someone is at, knowing that they could very well be struggling. Kindness. Kindness will flow from our compassion for others, that we would treat them well and not with contempt. Now, humility, a great way that I've heard used to describe humility is not simply thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. It's not bringing yourself down or thinking that you're lesser, but fighting the selfishness that wants to put us first. Meekness. Now, meekness is a tough one for a lot of people because we see meekness many times as weakness, but meekness has more to do with our approach to people, not lording over them, but walking in that humility that says, I'm not better or more important than you. Patience. Patience is something that we all struggle with in one form or another, but it can be especially difficult when dealing with others who are struggling with something that we ourselves are not. Then it says to bear with one another, and this literally means to bear one another's burdens. I'm accepting the weight of your difficulties and helping you through them. Forgiveness. Forgiving one another is something that we can only do with the knowledge of what has been forgiven on our behalf. When it comes to sin, someone bears the cost of it. When someone sins against me, in my forgiving them, I am bearing the cost of that sin. And finally, we're called to love one another, through which all of these are bound together. We can look at this list and on the one hand think, how am I ever supposed to live up to this? And on the other hand think, I'm certainly not treated this way even by other Christians. And on both accounts, you would be right. There has only ever been one person to ever fulfill this list, and that's Jesus. It's fitting then that this list of characteristics is couched between these two statements. Beginning of verse 12, it says we are God's chosen ones, holy and beloved. And then it ends in verse 15 with us being told that to let the peace of Christ rule in our hearts. Every one of these characteristics can only be fulfilled when we know how and in what way we are called. Holy and beloved. This holiness is from the death that Jesus died to make us clean and able to come before God. And beloved so much that he was willing to pay the ultimate price to bring us to him. And finally, walking in a peace that comes from that knowledge, knowing that no sin or hurt leveled against us is greater than the love that brought us to God. Knowing that we will struggle to meet this requirement on us, we're told what to do in times of disagreement. Verse 16 says, "Let the word of Christ dwell in you rightly, teaching and admonishing one another in all wisdom, singing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs with thankfulness in your hearts to God." We build each other up with the word. To admonish, this doesn't mean to tear down, but to lift back up and to restore. We devote our hearts to worship God, and in this, every wrong fades away in the overwhelming love that He has laid on us. If you'd like to learn more about this topic, go to our website at dvcc.com, click on Grow and then Sermons, and look for the teaching series on Colossians, and find the sermon titled Healthy Relationships.